Budget and Finance Committee to order. First thing I would like to do is thank the chair for allowing me to fly left seat today.
Turn your mic off. It is on. I think it's
on. I do want to thank the chair for allowing me to fly left seat today and experience this solo flight, especially since we've been on an airplane for the past, seems like 24 hours. So I thank you for that. The first part of business, we'd like to take a bill out of order. I'd like to take RS 2013-579. There's 2013-579, sponsored by Stein and Pardue, amends the Metro Code to delete the requirement that the county clerk's office issue a separate decal to be displayed on the vehicle indicating the vehicle has been registered with Metro. Councilman Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Obviously, Clerk Wynn is actually here and waving her hand in the back. This is obviously at her instigation, which she assures us all is going to be more efficient and actually save us money. And she is here if there are any questions, but I would renew the motion to approve.
Second. Have a second? Any opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Tiger.
Saving money in government, what a novel thought. Can we have an estimate of about how much and why?
The estimate is about $24,000 a year, and that would just keep the clerk from having to buy the actual stickers. Everyone would still pay the required wheel tax and be registered locally. It would just eliminate the requirement that they go through the process of obtaining separate stickers. And Ms. Wynn is here.
Yeah, and while Brenda is here, I just want to thank you for bringing this forward. Anything we can do, too often we look at $24,000 as an insignificant amount in the grand scope of things, but every message that we can send to the public that saving every dollar does matter is important, and if you have any comment that you want to make on top of that, I would ask you to do so.
Ms. Wynn, go ahead.
Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today to just to let you know what we believe we're going to save is about $24,000 in printing cost. Now, I can't tell you the amount of man hours this is going to save us from not having to handle this inventory. So there's additional savings that we will realize, but again, it would be in the form of not having to handle all the decals. I appreciate your willingness to even take up this legislation, and we'll answer any of the questions you may have.
Councilman Stein?
Move it out.
Second.
Okay, motion been made. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-905 approves a state grant of $1,530,000.
We need to go back to 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we skipped one there. RS 2013-904 authorizes the compensation of special judges presiding in General Sessions Court. Councilman Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would first move approval.
Yes.
And then I would say we have here the experts and instigators of this piece of legislation, Judge Eisenstein, and a majority of the court is with us. And if the chair and the committee is all right, I would ask that either Judge Eisenstein or one of the folks with him might give us an overview of why this legislation is before us.
Thank you for hearing us out today. There are a couple of reasons why this proposal was made, and it's actually been sort of hanging around for a little while. When I started as judge almost 10 years ago, I can hardly believe it, 9.5 years ago, we were in Davis County lucky enough to when someone got sick or had to go to a funeral, which has actually happened today on a couple of occasions, to get retired judges or former judges to come sit on fairly regular basis. In the last few years, the surrounding counties of Davidson County have passed ordinances to pay former and retired judges to sit if someone is sick or has to go to a funeral or has to go to a conference. And it makes it difficult to pull somebody in. Judge Franks came on occasion, some others. And so we started having more and more difficulty in that situation, and really the only retired judge that we have at this point is Judge Brown that's agreed to sit, and he has done so. He sits for me or others if I've gone to a conference or I'm out sick. And by the way, I won the fight, so don't, that's what everybody's asked me. It's hard to take advantage of a person who is an experienced judge to ask them to come sit and not pay them for their time, just like the other counties surrounding us. So a few years ago, we started banning this around and decided that we would request the council to reimburse a former, or in this case be a retired judge, for sitting for a judge that's out at being sick or funeral or wherever. And the timing of this is also in view of a proposed state statute that I know Tim Garrett has seen. And I thought I was the only one that had read it in the entire state, but I guess not, wherein proposed by some rural judges, there would be some senior judges, at this point, three, quote, senior judges, one in each of the grand divisions of the state, and then a floater judge or two to sit for judges that are ill or have to go somewhere or whatever. And the problem with that is that that's not enough to cover the needs of all the counties. And there's a tax that goes along with it, a litigation tax, that if it is passed, that would tack on anywhere from $2 to $4 on each item that's filed. So in view of that and other matters, the judges voted to propose paying for former or really retired judges first, and then possibly have some former judges to sit when necessary. And that's really the proposition. It's not that, in most circumstances, it's not that great a number of days, but to give you an example, today we had a judge that had to go to either one or two funerals. And I don't know whether all of you know this, but we don't set our own dockets, and somebody has to cover a docket. So Judge Brown came in today and sat for that judge. I was lucky to be on the board of the American Judges Association for a number of years, and when I would go to those meetings, my dockets would still go on, and I'd have to call. This year I called on Judge Brown. If you're sick, I had to be out Friday to have this done to me, and I had to get somebody to cover for me. So there are instances, life does take us out, but our courts don't stop. And I brought the annual report from last year, and just criminal cases and citations, we did almost 99,000 of them, 98,249. Civil cases, almost 40,000. So the dockets can be large, and they have to go on. And so we need somebody. And Davidson County is a large metropolitan area now, and I believe that the citizens deserve to have a a retired judge sit when a judge has to be gone. And I believe it's fair to pay them for their time, just like a substitute teacher gets paid. I believe that a former retired judge should get paid. So that's why we're here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I spent a while with, I think, Charlie Tigert earlier on and some others discussing this with you. It's a complicated issue about getting judges to substitute for you. The statute's very complicated. And what we try to avoid at all costs, if we can, is getting a lawyer to sit. And this would make it much easier to get a retired judge to sit. So that's the proposition.
Judge, and this may be for Mr. Hassel, but how do you all anticipate funding this? My understanding is that there may be money in your budget that might cover this through the remainder of this year, but give us a feel for that, please.
I feel like in the current fiscal year, we may be able to cover it. We may be a little short. We'll just have to see how this fiscal year goes. Next fiscal year, we intend to ask for, an improvement item in the budget.
This would take effect when? January? Do you know? Is there an effective date or immediately upon passage?
I think in light of, this, between now and the end of the year, I mean, we may not be using it much at all for the balance of this calendar year, so probably essentially in January.
All right, now, this is a question you're not going to want to answer, and I'll do some of Mr. Riebling's work for him. What do you anticipate on an annual basis a fund to pay judges that sit in would be? Do you have a range that you're going to ask for in terms of increase in your budget for this?
Probably 45 to 50,000 is a range.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had most of my questions answered, and Dan, thanks for kind of telling me what you did and through the other situation. But and Councilman Stein answering. But aren't there some fees that are controlled by the judges that may be increased or could be increased that don't necessarily, that could be increased without council approval that might help fund this?
Yes, there are. And the council on occasion has asked us to increase fees, and we've done it, but we have not reached the cap on some of them by any stretch of the imagination, and haven't raised any in, I think, 8 years. So
and what I would suggest, and I hope you do, is when the time comes to present your budget to the mayor, that you consider raising those to maybe take care of the $40 or $45 or $50,000 that it would take to do that. And I'm assuming that's what you'll do. And Mr. Chairman will know over here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Tiger.
Thank you. John, so there's no cap on how much they can spend on this?
State law limits the amount of compensation for retired or former judges. They can't get paid more than what a regular general sessions judge gets, but there's no cap on the amount per year that could be spent.
Judge Eisenstein, I don't want this to sound callous, but what is the procedure if a judge can't make it to the bench that day? Certainly I understand illness, and certainly I understand conferences. I guess I can understand an occasional funeral for, close friends and those type of situations, but are there any other safeguards that I just don't feel like working, or it's a big, football day and I'd rather watch that?
Well, yeah, Councilman, I don't think we've run into that problem. a lot of people, I'm going to be honest, and I'm one of them, and there are others, we even show up sick, which isn't smart. And the reason is, the reason is this. It is very difficult to follow the state statute per se to find a special judge if you're sick or a funeral. And I'm going to just go through the process that poor Warner Hassel has to go through, and it's an impossibility. And that causes severe problems, and that's why a lot of people do show up sick. First, you have to seek interchange with a former judge from within the county or judicial district. That means technically you got to get in touch with all the trial judges, any former judge, such as Judge Brown. If it's an emergency, or if it's 2 or 3 days, that's not easy to do, or if you have to do it quickly. Second, then you have to go to interchange with a current or former judge from outside the county. Now, that is where we had sort of a safeguard, at least if I remember correctly. Warner, if you correct me, we were able to get some former or retired judges from out of county, I believe, when I first started. But now the surrounding counties pay under this statute or ordinance that this one's modeled after. Robertson County is $90 an hour, no cap, and Judge Brown can talk to this because he's set some. Williamson County is $300 half day and then $50 per hour after that. Wilson County is the amount that a judge makes with no limit. So we don't have that, we can't pull from there, okay? And then after that, then you have to go to the AOC and ask them to help us, okay? Now, what we've been able to do is, because these other two issues have sort of gone by the wayside, is we've gotten Judge Brown a standing order from the AOC, because he's a former judge. And we've gotten one or two others, but they're not retired judges. They might have lost a race. So Judge Brown's got a standing order. So he can come sit if we can't get these two first groups, which you never can. It's just an impossibility. But then he's coming in and he's not getting paid. Whereas if he goes to Robertson County under the same issue, or Williamson County, or Wilson County, or surrounding county, he gets paid. So bless his heart, if I were Judge Brown, and I got a call from Davidson County, and I got a call from Robertson County, I know he's a great guy and he loves us all, but he's probably going to go to Robertson County because he's going to get paid, and he should get paid. And the people of Davidson County deserve, in my opinion, in those instances where we need a judge to sit in, to get a judge that has experience here. As I say, we're now a major metropolitan area with fairly significant dockets every day. And I think people should expect to see, if in an emergency situation or an illness situation, a former or really a retired judge, somebody that has been through there and has retired. And that is the problem. That it's an impossibility to really have the other.
All right, final question. How many judge days are built in this surplus before we cross the line and have to go into supplemental appropriation?
I don't know. I don't have an answer because we never monitored it, because we've never paid any attention.
What is the expected
Councilman, I don't believe in this fiscal year that we're going to run into any trouble. I could eat my words, but it's not that often that, and for that many days, that you run into the problem. I'll tell you where it's going to, the thing that you can predict is the following. In September, there's a judicial conference that all the judges are required to go to. we have had difficulty in getting people to sit for us on the dates that all the judges are in Memphis, or next year is in Memphis, I think. We're under statute supposed to go. So there'd be a period in September, let's say, of 4 days, is that right? That people are going to have to sit. And
Are the dockets adjusted during those circumstances?
We do adjust them where we do the jail dockets, which really can't stop. We have 2 jail dockets, actually, two jail dockets, 2 settlement dockets. Then we have a huge docket that's in courtroom 1A that is state citations that we run 1,000 people through a week. That's 50,000 people a year that we can't stop. And then you need to have domestic violence issues taken care of. The ones you don't have to worry about during that time as much are civil dockets and some of the bond dockets. But you've got to deal with, we don't stop, so you got to deal with those. And in the past, years ago, we were able to pull some retired judges from around, but they're staying home now because they're getting paid. And then, so we've run into some difficulties. That happens twice a year. So those are 2 periods of time that need to be covered. Other than that, it's hit and miss. And I just don't have a feel for the numbers because we've never really followed it.
Well, I'm just going to make a final comment. I think this is, I agree with you, having an experienced judge that, I would feel very comfortable if I'm in court and Judge Brown is sitting there, that I'm going to get a fair shake, and as opposed to a lawyer that's advertising on the back of a bus or whatever. I would just hope that the funding of this would be covered under your current surplus, and we won't face the unpleasant task come April or May looking for a supplemental appropriation.
Well, I think we'll be okay this year. I think we'll be able to do it. Number one, we got elections coming up, and people will be covering, Judge Brown will cover some, but then we'll just have to finagle around. So I think we'll be all right this year. And I'm just going to be candid with you. The timing of this, for me, was tied a little bit to the statute that was proposed in the General Sessions Judges Conference. And I believe that if we didn't do something to have something in place for experienced judges to sit here, that we wouldn't be able to at least have an opportunity to opt out of a statute that is not going to be helpful to Davidson County and would complicate our lives immensely in getting special judges, because why would anybody sit if they could go be a senior judge with the state and get paid their full salary? Then how would I ask Judge Brown to come in here and sit and not get anything? And I just don't think it's fair, and I don't think Davidson County should be put in a position that we wouldn't have experienced good judges to sit when somebody's ill.
Councilman Claver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Eisenstein, I want to be 2 questions, a little more specific. What is the rate of pay that is being considered for these subs?
Well, what we're looking at is just matching the surrounding counties, which generally is $300 a half day is what everybody pretty much pays around. It would seem to me that in many instances you could almost get away with that, because a lot of the afternoon dockets are settlement dockets and are not necessarily trial dockets. And you would have a better opportunity to get somebody to help you in the afternoon than in the morning. Morning, you very rarely can get any help because those are pretty much all trial dockets and everybody's got to be in there. So what I envision more than anything is a half day for a special judge, except in unusual circumstances. So What we were talking about doing is exactly what all the surrounding counties were doing, no more, no less.
So it's $300 for a half day.
Half day is what Williamson County does, and I think Robertson County would be a little bit more than that, but I think we're looking at Williamson County. Robertson County would be, it's $90 an hour, isn't it? So it's between $300 and $400 a half day.
Okay. The other question, you talked about fees, and we've had a couple of general questions about the fees. Do you believe that increasing the fees that you have the capability to do could cover your liability as far as these funds?
Yes.
So would that be your intent then, moving forward, to try to do that as much as possible with fees rather than asking for more money from the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councilman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I was going to mention, Dan, it doesn't have to do with y'all, or at least whoever looks after, but Rich and Marty, when it comes time for the legislature, if the bill that is proposed up there goes through, they'll do everything they can to add the litigation tax on to Metro's fees, and the question is whether or not we're going to get any of that or not. I mean, we talked about opting out if we provide this, but we really ought to try to get those funds, for Metro. So just whoever is our lobbyist, whoever's involved, Dan, is that a fair statement?
Yes.
We just need to be involved with what goes on, and if y'all will please let us know, some of us might be able to at least help, but they'll tack it on, and Metro won't get anything. So the administration should be on top of that, and I hope they'll keep us involved.
Councilman Langston. Councilman Langston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Einstein, I wanted to ask you, are lawyers still able under the statute to serve as special judges? Because it sounds like the barrel is getting pretty dry up there for people to sit for it.
Well, we have to go through the whole process before we can get a lawyer. In other words, technically, you've got to seek interchanges, then you have to go out of county, you've got to try trial judges, then you have to go to the AOC. Then the final, this is the letter I'm reading from that set it all out to us a number of years ago. Finally, only when the above procedures fail to provide a judge, a lawyer may be appointed as a special judge. So, you're right. You have to go through this process. We do, on a very rare occasion, have to get a lawyer because as I said, if the courtroom's full of people, what are you going to do? And there's nobody to do it. I mean, what many times happens is one of us will go in there and try and help, but trust me, if you leave people sitting for hours and hours, they're not happy.
Right.
And these dockets are not small. Some of you know that. And you really do need to move it along. So, the Supreme Court and the AOC and everybody that's involved does not want us to use lawyers. As Councilman Tigert said, it's just much better to get a former judge, or if you can get somebody by interchange to do it. And it makes us look much better too, as a city and as a judge and as a court. And the circuit courts, they have senior judges. We have 2 or 3 that sit here. And of course, they get paid their full salaries. That's their system. So they don't ever run into that situation. It's just general sessions. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilman Domingue.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a quick question. You said there's 50,000 cases on the docket for the state. What other dockets do you have to deal with, and what are the round numbers?
All right. I wish all of you would come watch. Some of you did. I invited some over when I was going through this. We have the biggest docket we do is called 1A, and that's in the courtroom on the first floor. And that's generally state citations that can go anywhere from driving on a revoked license, driving on without a license, to shoplifting, to simple possession. And those are people that aren't physically arrested. they are giving a citation and they are told to be booked and come to court. That is a huge docket. Then we also run 2 separate jail dockets. There's one called the felony jail docket, that's in courtroom 3A, and that's everybody that's in jail that's charged with a felony. And that can run anywhere from, 20 to, 32 pages. And there are a number of names on a page. Then today was on the misdemeanor jail docket, and that's everybody that's in jail on a misdemeanor. And that docket today was 14 pages for the morning docket, and then I had 2 settlement dockets in the afternoon where we took 30-something pleas. Then we have 3 bond dockets. We have 1 judge that just does criminal bond cases solely, and we have 2 other bond dockets. Those are very large now. And those also have afternoon dockets, and then we have 2 civil dockets, which we cut back. We used to have 3, but because of criminal dockets have gotten so large, we had to cut back. And then we have traffic, all of our favorite dockets. Traffic docket, state traffic docket, mental health, central state docket, so we do a lot of cases.
So would you say there's 200,000 in a year that you deal with? 300,000?
I'll tell you what we had. We had 98,000 criminal citations and warrants. We didn't try all these, but there were 87,000 state and metro traffic citations. Almost 8,000 judicial committals at Central State. 38,000 civil cases, new civil cases, and that doesn't mean all the ones that come back. 3,500 orders of protection, and then we have I do the mental health court, Judge Moreland does a drug court, so we have those dockets. We did a total of 240,000 cases, not including civil cases that were filed years before and would come back.
So it would be safe to say a 50-cent tax on per case would more than cover the 55,000.
Oh yeah, well we're not. I mean the problem with the state legislation is between $2 and $4 per filing, but that doesn't come to Metro. That's going to the state and then going to the AOC to fund the senior judge program throughout the state, which I'm not sure would see any benefit from. And that really was one of the impetuses for me to bring this forward now.
Well, I agree with you that our judges should be paid. We'll have to deal with what the state does and whether that benefits us to have 1 judge per grand division to assist all the counties. I won't speak to whether that's a wise thing given the numbers, but I think we can generate the revenue to cover this pretty painlessly. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Eisenstein, I had a quick question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate all your work that you do with mental health, so everybody knows that you work hard. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I had a question about the fee. I'm not clear, is the fee a fee that the attorneys assume, or is it a fee that their clients will assume?
No.
Who assumes that fee?
There are a number of fees that the council has approved for us to charge for various things, probation fees, school fees, and those kind of things. And we have not gotten to the cap on those that the council has approved and asked us to raise. And so there's a good deal of difference between what we're charging now for some school fees, probation fees, and the cap that's already been approved by the council that we've been asked to look at. And so that's the greatest potential to cover this. We're not talking about a huge amount of money, so.
Lit tax, though, does affect
Yeah,
clients.
the tax by that under the proposed state legislation that Councilman Garrett was talking about, that would be on every filing in Davidson County. Like if you went to file a civil lawsuit, a detainer warrant or whatever, under the proposed statute, it's a $2 to $4, depending on, can go from $2 to $4 per filing, that everybody in Davidson County, not just people in the court, but if you wanted to file something, would be added on. But that doesn't go to Metro. That's a state lit tax. That goes to the state and would go to the AOC office, Administrative Office of Court, to fund this senior judge business.
Okay,
but we wouldn't get the benefit of that.
Okay, yeah,
But
no,
I like Councilman Garrett's idea.
I guess my question was, though, sometimes I think people who are poor and they get caught up in that system, it just seems like there's a lot of fees already, and I would just be curious to know how many fees there are. I think there should be good judges. I think that judges are important, but I know for people who don't necessarily have good representation, that find themselves caught up, that it can be a really a web.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're kind of feed to death if you're poor and you don't necessarily how to navigate the system. And I just think that that would be a detriment. But I do think that judges should be paid. And I think we should have good substitute judges because it's a serious matter. But that would be my concern for those persons that are indigent.
We're sensitive to that. And then in many instances, there is a provision for pauper's oaths and in situations that are necessary, and also to waive some of the fees for those that can't do it. But, we're on the low end because Metro has been concerned about it, as well as the judges. We're on the very low end of most of these fees if you go countywide, statewide. We're at the bottom of them. And I think that's good. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm with you on that one. I think that's good.
Councilor Weiner.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Dan, one quick question. You may have touched on this, but on average, how many days a year do we use a substitute?
And I'm not trying to be evasive, but I don't know. I'm just going to tell you candidly, I don't know. I'm going to tell you my experience, and I can't really tell you a whole lot of other people's. I go to all the conferences that are required under statute. So that is, for me, if I'm on a docket that needs to be covered, that's for me 6 or 7 days. I generally have gone to the American Judges Association conference because I was on that board with Judge Rubin. And that is an additional, that was an additional 5 to 6 days minimum for me. Knock wood, I have not been sick much. I've had to go to some funerals. So the most for me has been conferences. And I think they're important, and I think they're important for our judges here to go. And that's where I've had to get special judges. I said Judge Brown had to sit for me for 4 or 5 days when I went to the American Judges Association. So I can't tell you the number because we've just never kept a record of it. But I don't see a lot of it. Warner, do you, on the most part?
It's a moving target.
It's a moving target. I don't think you have to be concerned. I'm saying this truthfully, of people abusing it. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be used in such a manner that if you are sick or you're going to be at a conference or you got to go to a funeral or, I had a grandbaby, I went out of town for a couple of days for that. Those are the kinds of things you're going to see. And it's difficult for me to do that because I don't want to ask somebody to sit there for nothing, number one. And number two, it's difficult, if not impossible, depending on your docket, to get another judge who's there with you to do it because they've got their own dockets. And it's difficult to ask them to cover yours too. So
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do you amend your docket to cover your vacation times?
I do.
So in other words, do we need to have somebody that's going to
what
cover
I
vacation
do
time
on
as well?
occasion,
Can't always because the system drives you.
I know. What I do is, if I know, let's say, a year ahead or 6 months ahead, when I practice law, I could kind of do it. And I can swap with somebody a week, I can do it, but it ain't easy to do. And I've only been successful once in doing that because people plan, and if you're on the bench 10 or 11 weeks, you need a few days off, trust me. I never would thought I'd say that, but you do. you need to do it. So the only way I'm in mine is, on occasion, I will come in if I'm in town on my week off, and we'll do a mental health court docket, because they get so large. But it's just, when you're off, you need to be off, trust me. So.
I remember from watching Leon for years and years and years and sitting in the court, I 100% support having somebody that can come in and spell y'all.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge. We certainly appreciate your input.
Thank you so much.
Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-905 approves a state grant of $1,539,61 to the Davis County Election Commission to purchase a computer, printer, and software. That would have been a lot. Seeing none of discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-906, Councilman Stein, the sponsor, approves an annual state grant of $183,350 to the Office of Emergency Management to subsidize Metro Emergencies Management Program. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-907, sponsors Stein and Tigard, approves a state grant of $4,298 to the Nashville Public Library to purchase computers for use by the library patrons and staff. Council Lady Moore.
Just a quick question. Is this for all libraries or just certain ones that are designated this grant? I just wanted to know.
Is there anyone here from the library?
It is.
Hi, I'm Susan Dry. I'm the Associate Director for Administrative Services for the library. And it's going to be 2 pilot programs, so not system-wide yet.
And what 2 pilot programs?
I'm not sure which libraries.
Okay. Could you get that information to me, please?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Thank you. Bye.
Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-908, sponsored Maynard and Stein, approves an amendment to a contract between the Metro Board of Health and Mars Pet Care U.S. Incorporated to provide food for dogs at the Metro Animal Control Facility and to promote adoption efforts by extending the contract through December 31st, 2013. Second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-909, sponsored Maynard and Allen, approves an Amendment 2 to a contract between the Metro Board of Health and Vanderbilt University Medical Center to provide medical professionals to distribute antibiotics, vaccines, and antivirals in the event of a public health emergency by extending the term of the agreement through June 30th, 2014. Second. Seeing no opposition, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-912, sponsor Stein, approves a state grant of $2,161,685 to the Nashville Career Advancement Center to establish programs and deliver services to dislocated workers. Second. No discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Sorry. Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you. I just always like to know what area, when they say the dislocated workers, who do they target? That's all. I think it's such a good thing. I'm always curious to know who they target and who those people would be.
Hi, I'm Brian Clark with the Nashville Career Advancement Center. The funds are available to any dislocated worker who's able to work in this country, who's lost their job through no fault of their own and meets the federal eligibility requirements. We cover a 4-county area: Davidson, Wilson, Rutherford, and Trousdale. So We don't go after a specific targeted group, but anyone who's eligible, we can certainly assist.
Thank you. I have one more question. And do you do outreach when you have these type of funds? So in other words, do you go into, I know you said you got the 3 or 4 county region, but what kind of outreach do you do so that they are aware that these funds are available so they can take advantage of them and get back to work?
Right. We don't do a great deal of advertising because of limited funds. We really hate to get the word out and get covered up and spend all the funds immediately. But to answer your question, we're located in all the career centers within that 4-county area. The career centers used to be the unemployment office, if you will. So most of the individuals who are on unemployment end up in that career center at some point or another. And at that point, we have assistants in the resource center helping individuals, and we tell them about the programs then. We hand out flyers. We also work companies when they have layoffs. We have a rapid response unit, so if a company lays off a group of individuals, we'll show up at a scheduled meeting, talk about the benefits, talk about our program, talk about the unemployment program.
Councilman Bedney?
Yeah, do you also help like new workers, like people that just graduated from high school, young, that sort of employees?
Yes, we actually have 3 different funding streams. One is the dislocated worker program, which we were discussing. You have to be laid off through no fault of your own, separated from a spouse who was supporting you, or that sort of thing. We also have an adult program, which is for individuals over the age of 18. You can be underemployed, you can be unemployed, you can be fired, you can come in, or you can just not ever have had a job. You can come in if you meet the eligibility requirements, which is working in this country, select a service if you're a male within certain ages, and you're low income, then we'll help you. We also have a youth program, which is up to the age of 24. So that should cover the group that you're talking about. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-913, Councilman Stein approves a state grant $1,845,287 to establish programs and deliver services to adult workers. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-914, Councilman Harrison and Stein and Domney approves an agreement between Metro Government and Nashville Electric Service to repair 500 feet of eroded pond bank along Great Circle Road for the protection of the roadway and utilities within the public right-of-way. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. RS 2013-918, sponsored Tiger, appropriates $10 million from the undesignated fund balance of the general fund of the General Services District to the Metro Pension Fund for the purposes of reducing Metro's unfunded pension liability. Councilman Tiger.
I liked your comment earlier when you said, seeing no opposition, let's vote. So you could have said that on this one. And all right, so Rich, we said we were going to have this discussion. So here we are, a month ago, the headlines on the paper, Metro proposes to sell $200 million worth of bonds to shore up our pension plan.
I said strengthen the pension plan, not shore up.
Strengthen, thank you. Okay, I don't want to be misquoted. So some of us took that as a sign that there were some dark clouds on the horizon. I've become more of an expert on pension plans across this country. I just challenge you to Google unfunded pension plans or something similar, and trust me, there are dozens, hundreds, thousands of articles across this country of horror stories. So
we're not one of them.
We are not one of them. But to strengthen our plan, you thought that there was a good idea to pour some more money over there.
That idea, in my mind, would have reduced the unfunded liability while also reducing Metro's annual requirements over that same period of time.
Okay. All right, so this bill proposes to shift some money from the rainy day fund over to that pension fund, which I assume any amount of money that went in there would have a similar type effect.
Well, obviously, any money you put into the pension fund produced a liability, but I think you need to put it into context as what I think the appropriate issues are, which I'd be happy to.
All right, the floor is yours.
Okay. As I've said previously, our pension fund is in good shape. So there's no crisis, there's no emergencies. We are typically funded well over 80%, which is on the high side of public pension funds. As it relates to the calculation that was done June 30th of 2013, we do an annual calculation. And over the course of that period of time, you have to remember that in 2009 and 2010, we took major losses in the fund, as did everyone in the country, in your 401k, in your private funds, because of the economy. We smooth those losses over a 5-year period. At the end of 2013, we now would have covered all those losses in our fund, so it made the unfunded liability appear even higher than it normally is because of the smoothing of those losses. I talked with our actuary today, and I think it's fair to say that based on gains that we've seen in the plan last fiscal year, that when they do that same calculation in 2014, the unfunded liability will be reduced. And just as an example, the COLA, because the way the plan's structured, there's a 1.5% built into the actuarial assumptions because of COLA adjustments based on the economy. Well, there won't be one because of the inflation rate this year, and that alone would reduce the liability more than $20 to $25 million. So putting a one-time $10 million into the fund has minimal impact on the fund. I mean, I would clearly say it's a Band-Aid approach to an on-standing issue that probably warrants a lot more discussion that I think we should have as a council and as a city. But taking money out of your operating fund when we don't know exactly where we're going to be at the end of the year, we think it's going to be pretty good. I just don't think that's a prudent use of our money at this time.
Sure. All right, I'm going to read you a sentence here. This bipartisan, non-affected think tank said, cites one example in Detroit, which claimed as late as 2011 that their pension funds were 80% fully funded. New auditors found a $3.5 billion shortfall, a hole that pushed the city into bankruptcy. What safeguards do we have with our current auditors to make sure that we're getting good information?
Well, I mean, we have used the same actuaries in this city for a number of years. I believe they've always done good work. They continue to recommend us funding our pension at a higher level than we are legally required to do so, and we do so on an annual basis. The auditors audit the statements. There's nothing to come to anyone's belief that there's anything egregious in our pension system. We've not increased benefits as a number of communities have done and got themselves in a bad situation by funding some of these so-called, these beautiful, plans where that we can't afford. So, I mean, we've been prudent in not expanding the benefits. We've actually reduced it a little bit through going back to the 10-year vesting from the 5-year vesting. I think that, we rely on our professionals. They've given us great advice over the years. I think we're pretty comfortable with the numbers.
Okay. The letter you sent to us in response to this resolution, let me make sure, are you not certifying the availability of funds?
Until the audit is complete, I can't tell you exactly we'll have that money. I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell you I thought our undesignated fund balance was not well in excess of that number.
But we just spent a couple months ago $500,000 to fund our incentive for the filming of Nashville. So I guess I'm looking for the point of which somewhere between $500,000 was okay, 10 million is non-prudent. At what point in between there is it prudent?
I guess it's a case-by-case examination, Councilman Taggart.
Well, so I did 10 million on the high end, which still left us, John, if I'm not correct, above the goal of 5%, where that would put us at 5.9% or 5.6%, thank you. Well, I would just say to the council, I trust Rich a lot. He's been in this business. He understands municipal finance as well as any finance director I've ever dealt with. When the red flag went up, to me, this body ultimately is responsible, and there's nothing more sacred than the viability and the promise we made to our retirees. And rather than be tempted, we just saw a case here earlier today to spend that money on other needs of the city. To me, when Rich said that we could strengthen our pension fund by adding money to it, I guess my only disagreement with Rich is I would not call 10 million a relatively insignificant impact. That I think it was a good faith effort to shift some money into this. The market is going good, and this was a way for us not to be tempted to spend that money on anything less important than funding our retirees.
Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Opposed?
No.
You take the vote. Well, motion fails. Bills on second reading. BL 2013-576, sponsor Stein, authorizes Metro departments to apply for grants that do not require a Metro match without first going to council unless otherwise required by the grantor.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a substitution?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, there's a substitute which I would move, and then once it's seconded, I have a brief explanation. Thanks. What this bill does, what the substitute does, is currently the rules in the government is that when any department applies for a grant, they have to get approval from the legal department, from the finance department, and then from this Metro Council before they can even apply. Then, once we get the grant, it has to be accepted by this council, and so we approve it on the back end. What this bill simply does, if it doesn't require a match, and it's not a federal grant, this simply says that a department notifies budget and notifies legal they're applying, and then they go ahead and apply. It doesn't reduce council's influence in any way, because before we could accept anything, we have to officially vote on it. And so this just simply allows and gives discretion to our departments to try to react sometimes quickly when there are opportunities, but to simply look for non-governmental monies in a more efficient way. And I would move the substitute's adoption.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the bill substituted?
Aye.
Opposed? Substitute bill passes. Okay. Councilman Stein, would you move the bill as substituted?
Yes, and I move as substituted. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Substituted passes. BL 2013-577, sponsors Journey and Holloman, amends the Metro Code to require certified appraisal prior to the purchase of property for use as park, open land or open space.
Second.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hold on a minute, we do have discussion. Councilman Stein, are you still up? No. Councilman Claiborne.
Yes, just for information from one of the sponsors, what the goal that's hoped to be achieved by moving in this?
Okay. Let me find you here, Mr. Holland. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the goal is just when we take on, obviously, we've decided that we're going to pursue more open space, and some of that is going to be acquiring various pieces of property, and I think it's good for us to know what is the actual value of the property that we're taking on. In some cases, there may be situations where we want to know what is the value of the land on the market versus what we're going to pay for, or even if it's being given to us, maybe what issues lie in the land that we would want to know about before we take it on. So that's all.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. BL 2013-578, sponsored Tigard, amends the Metro Code to exempt nonprofit organizations receiving a grant of less than $5,000 from the requirement that a copy of the previous year's annual audit be submitted to Metro. Councilman Stein.
Thank you. I support what Councilman Tigard is trying to do here, and I'm not blindsiding him. I mentioned to them ahead of the meeting. I think it doesn't quite get at exactly what he wants, however, because this puts the onus on the size of the grant, and technically, if the Boy Scouts or the YMCA only got $5,000 from us, they wouldn't have to send us their annual report. I think what needs to be added here is not only make it less than $5,000, but because I think what Councilman Tigard's trying to get at is the very small organizations that sometimes it would take their entire budget to do an annual audit that is usually required by major grant makers. I would urge us to add an amendment to this, which I'm late in doing, and I bring it to the floor, so maybe the councilman, if we can't get it done, would put this off for a meeting, to make it for organizations who have a budget of $50,000 or less and who are applying for a grant of less than $5,000 would be exempted from this, and then that gets us to the size of the organizations he's trying to get at. And so I throw that out there. I think we'd have to suspend the rules to take an amendment on that, and I'll leave that up to the sponsor's judgment.
John, could an amendment be offered tomorrow night for this?
It would require a rule suspension, but without objection, it could be added.
Okay, and my commitment to Councilman Stein, and he hit the nail right on the head. If we can get that amendment prepared and get a suspension of the rules, we'll do so. If not, then I will be deferring this until we can bring it back up on second reading tomorrow.
Councilman Maynard.
Thank you. Understanding Councilman Stein's explanation for Charlie, I want to ask Charlie, the threshold of $50,000, if you could just tell, Chair, if I could ask Councilman Tigard to explain the threshold of $50,000.
Councilman Stein had been in contact with the Center for Nonprofit Management, and that was sort of the threshold between very small nonprofits and getting into an intermediate, larger size. Our experience during the grants for the school gardens showed that many of the smaller nonprofits that were involved with school gardens simply did not have the means to do an audit, and that was the impetus that John and I started out with this bill. So $50,000 was the recommendation of the Center for Nonprofit Management.
The reason why I bring that up, because there are several nonprofits that even though their budget exceeds $50,000, it will cost them $3,000 to $5,000 to $6,000 to do an audit, and many of them, they're very tight, and so they don't have excess funds in order to do those audits, even though their annual budget exceeds $50,000. So that's why I was wondering why the threshold would be 50, because there are plenty of nonprofits that I know that want to apply for grants, but then to be in compliance, they have to spend $3,000 to $6,000 for those annual audits.
Councilman Stein.
And Councilman Maynard, that was the figure that the head of the Center for Nonprofit Management mentioned to me. I am more than willing to do some research. Again, I don't know if there's a hurry. Maybe we just ought to wait 2 weeks, Charlie. But let me also tell you, the one thing I would also urge us, and we don't want to do, we have had a history in this city over the last decade of some small organizations getting grants from the city and not spending that money wisely. So we don't want to throw all of the baby out with the bathwater. We want to make sure that there's and under the state state law, they do have to file something with us to make sure of that. But I'm willing to do the research and to see what the basis is of that 50,000 figure. It was not arbitrary on Louis Levine's part to mention that number, but maybe that's not the right number. I don't know the answer to that.
And I would suspect, being in the business I'm in, that is a threshold that IRS, from a short form to a much more detailed form, so that's where that cutoff number came from and why it made. Many organizations over 50,000, the IRS is going to require much more detailed financial information.
Okay, so,
Move approval, and then we'll work it out tomorrow.
okay. Second. No other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. BL 2013-581, Councilman Stein and Domney and others, grants permanent easements for properties located at 2801 Tucker Road and 3133 West Hamilton Avenue to Piedmont Natural Gas Company for the purpose of installing and maintaining a gas line at a cost to Metro of $16,225.
Second.
See no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. BL 2013-582, Council Lady Langster, Councilman Stein and others, authorizes Metro government to enter into a participation agreement with 2400 10 West End Avenue, LLC, regarding the construction of 310 linear feet of 8-inch water main beneath 24th Avenue North from West End Avenue to Elston Place at a cost of Metro of $128,500.
Move approval.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing no other business? Adjourned.